Flopsy and the Easter Bunny Olympics, Part 3 of 40, Wells Fargo Arena. Despite continuing discord and feuding between bunnies who thought including all good bunnies, regardless of color, fur, or the date they chose to celebrate Easter was just fine, and those bunnies who knew that only their Easter, which this year absolutely positively would fall on April 9th, was the only true Easter, bunnies all over the world knew that Easter was just 2 months away. Even though there remained some discord and dissent concerning when Easter might fall, everybody knew the Easter Games continued to follow the Easter Games tradition of holding the opening ceremony in Jerusalem on the full moon 1 month prior to Easter. That when this year's March 7th full moon arced as high in the 32 degrees north, 35 degrees east sky as it was capable, the official worldwide Bunny Game final competition would begin, and that following opening ceremonies in Jerusalem, the final announcements concerning who was in as Easter bunnies would be broadcast all over the world, and everybody would learn which bunnies would be part of fluffle after fluffle of Easter bunnies hopping to it come April 9th. The swarm of bunnies entering the Wells Fargo Arena consisted mostly of teenage brown bunnies, but as always, any bunny old enough to hop was allowed to compete. And of course, now bunnies of all colors were, if not kosher, then at least no longer considered truffa or forbidden. Naturally, brown bunnies predominated in the tryouts because there were more of them than black ones, and certainly white bunnies made up the smallest segment of would-be Easter bunnies. But Fiver, Clover, and I was the only trio that included one brown, one black, and one white bunny. A mixing and matching of colors that many bunnies felt went not only too far, but that perhaps should be against the law. Walking into the Wells Fargo Arena, my mind momentarily went back to when I was 5 and the last time I'd seen my grandfather before he passed on. For just a minute, I was again by my grandfather's bed where the ancient bunny told me, "Flopsy, don't ever let anybody tell you that you're not as good as they are because you're not brown." I admit I was mighty shocked when your mama brought your daddy home the first time and I saw that he was black. I mean, I'd always told Clover to be nice to black rabbits, and even white ones too, but I'd never dreamed she'd marry one, and well, like I said, I was shocked. I was even more shocked when you came along and I saw that I had a mixed reaction to just how beautiful, how handsome you look. I expected you to be brown like your mama or black like your daddy, not white. But when I saw you that first time, Fiver reminded me that his real daddy, that is to say his mama's first husband, had been run over by a car one day when he was out foraging for food, and that the bunny I thought of as his daddy was his stepfather, that Fiver, your father, is actually half black and half white. So you being born white was just as natural as could be, which I agree it is. Like I said, it just took me by surprise, that's all. But what I'm trying to say is that you being white and all, that's okay, that it's not your fault, and you're beautiful, okay? I just wanted you to know that. A speech that had been interrupted when my mother had walked into the room. A small smile on her face as though somehow what Grandpa Earflip was saying made her heart hurt, even though I didn't know why. And when she came into the room, she reminded me that Grandpa Earflip needed his sleep. Even now, 5 years later, that day, that last time I saw my Grandpa Earflip alive, still pops into my mind at different times. And I hear him telling me that I was okay, that I belonged even though I was white. Even while I continue to wonder if he really believed it or just really wanted to. Because this was my second Easter Games tryout this year and we'd seen competition in the past, we all knew that I would be queuing up away from my parents, that only bunny contenders who were under 10 were allowed to sit with an adult. Mom, Dad, and I joined the fluffle that was squeezing her way through the crowded halls, and as we arrived at the locker rooms, Mom looked like she really wanted to give me a big hug, but remember how I told her back in January not to after I tried and failed to win a spot at the games. It wasn't that I didn't want Mom and Dad to hug me or that I didn't want to hug them back. It was just that if I was going to be competing with the big bunnies as a big bunny, that we should try to blend in. And none of the teenage bunnies' moms and dads were doing the big hug thing. Mom looked like she was about to cry, but her voice sounded okay as she said, "When a bunny does his best, he has nothing to be ashamed of, right?" I nodded in response, wanting her to hug me while at the same time wanting her to go away, not because she was bothering me, but because I didn't want her to start crying because I was afraid that would make me start crying too. When I didn't answer, she repeated her final word. Right? She asked. I kept my head down rather than looking Mom and Dad in the eyes and said, yes, as that was all I was able to say without crying. It's a shame about placid paws, my dad said. You've trained hard, Flops, and we're proud of you. We're proud of you for who you are, how hard you try, and how big your heart is. We'll be proud when tryouts are through and you win. But if you don't, we'll be every bit as proud of you. Besides, he continued, bringing his mouth close to my ear and whispering, no matter how well you do or how beautiful you are, Tempestus may not be able to see it. His eyes might be that closed. Do you understand? I nodded yes, but only to indicate that I understood Dad's words, not that I understood why Mr. Lacus hated bunnies like me. I really hope Mr. Paws gets better. He's a good rabbit, I said, meaning it, but also wondering why Tempestus Lacus hated us so much. I wondered if Mr. Lacus could possibly see that white bunnies can be good bunnies too, and I wondered how he could possibly have represented all bunnies for the 18 years he'd been a representative for Chiwere-Siouan if he hated the black and white ones. I nodded to yes to let Dad know that I knew I was a good bunny no matter what Tempestus Lacus would say about me, my family, and our kind. And if all those terrible things he'd said about me and white bunnies during all those years when he'd represented Chiwere-Siouan's 4th District shouldn't have disqualified him from being a judge. Got to give Fiver a high five, right? Dad asked, flashing his famous smile. You bet, Dad, I said, smiling back and giving him a high five before turning to Mom, kissing her cheek, pulling away quickly and hollering over my shoulder, see you in the funny pages, as I squirmed through the crowd into the locker room and then beyond, where I, along with thousands and thousands of other Eazster Bunny wannabes, would be separated into subgroups and run through our preliminaries while the 9 and under bunnies performed in the arena.